The Endless Golf Podcast, brought to you by Toyota.
And welcome into another edition of the Endless Golf Podcast presented by Toyota. And joining me today at Ruddos Golf is the owner, John Ruddo. And John, it's great to have you back on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, man. It's a pleasure. It's been a while.
A little rainy day here in Ocean City.
A little bit.
We're going to talk a little golf, and we've had a little time to digest the Ryder Cup. And before we get into the Ryder Cup, though, I want to talk about the state of golf right now. It's amazing to me just, playing all the golf courses everywhere in the Ocean City area. Really great to see so many young people enjoying the game. And John, I think, we talked about this about 5 years ago. We really needed some younger people to take up the game and play. And I've really seen more of an influx of that, 21 to 35-year-old golfer playing. And there's more ladies playing as well.
Yeah, no doubt. And people who used to play have come back to playing. And a lot of that has to do with the COVID and the shutdown. But I think one of the biggest reasons you see more younger people out there playing is social media. YouTube, I think a driving force is Bryson DeChambeau, who unfortunately is on LIV and not the PGA Tour, but that's been a big component too. And I'm not up, I don't want to sound like the old progressive old guy, but
the old PGA professional.
No, the progressive commercial, the old guy.
Right.
My son sometimes says that
you're that guy.
I have maybe a few of those. But anyway, and there's a lot of influencers too. So I think between Bryson and the influencers who I don't know, unfortunately, a good golf is one of them, I think, who actually, I think there's 4 or 5 of those guys. They're going to have a PGA Tour event next year. They're going to sponsor it. So that social media and the influencers, and then the combination of Bryson and some of the younger professional players on YouTube, even President Trump, I guess, has influenced, I think, a lot of younger people to get out, at least try it and play. And, a lot of them have got the bug.
I think you're right, John. I think you hit the nail on the head with that. And also, I was thinking about this riding in this morning and thinking, there's almost a need for a couple different sets of rules of the game of golf. I mean, this one rule right now, in the fall season, and if you get into a tournament situation and you can only, look for your ball for a couple minutes,
right.
It's okay on tour because you got spotters, you got guys out there. But when you're playing in a competitive situation, and you can only look for your ball for three minutes
now.
I mean, it's kind of hard. There's leaves on the ground. The sun's in a bad position, and it doesn't really apply in some situations. And it really, if it's 3 minutes, you're going to get penalized a lot. You have to go back to the tee and hit another golf ball. I also think some of the rules were, playing the ball down and not touching the ball. Obviously, when we play in games and we have our own kind of set of rules. We kind of, hey, we're going to play this tee box. We're going to roll it in the fairway. Right. I think that all applies to a lot of different groups. But to play just PGA rules, and one of the big ones that I get pushback from is the 14 club rule. How many guys do we know have more than 14 clubs in their bag? I mean, there's definitely a place for kind of an amateur set of rules, in my opinion.
Well, to be honest with you, I just don't think amateurs who aren't playing in a competitive environment should have rules.
Right.
They're out there.
I kind of agree with that.
I mean, they're out there to have fun. If they want to take a mulligan, take a mulligan. I tell you what, the USGA did lax the rules on like out of bounds. In the old days, you would have to re-tee it, but now you can drop where your ball went out of bounds, bring it over to the fairway, and you'll be hitting your 4th shot. So that kind of helped pace the play a little bit. And in the hazard, if you ground your club, that's not a big deal anymore. I believe that's also the case in the bunker. But you have competitive professional golf, and then you have the rest. There is a little bit of amateur tournament golf that needs to play under the PGA rules and guidelines. But I think for the most part, if you're playing golf and you want to have fun, it's a free-for-all. I feel like you could do whatever you want. As long as you don't pace of play isn't a problem. Well, you don't back up the golf course. But if you want to take a mulligan, or if you want to rake a 3-footer, which I like to do, as you know, it's okay to do that.
Well, I actually feel like relaxing the rules a little bit for the amateurs out there playing, and we're not talking about amateurs that are really competitive. We're just talking about your average
Yeah.
amateur, everyday golfer. I think it'll actually speed up play a little bit. It won't, slow amateurs down. It'll actually speed up play. And one of the things I like to see when you go to a golf course, if there's a golf course that has a lot of out of bounds, just play it everything as a lateral hazard.
I know that's one rule I wish the USGA, when they made big rule changes, I think it was 2 years ago. The 3-minute looking for the ball, that was one of the rules. The ground in the club and the hazard, that was another rule they tweaked. I think for amateur, non-competitive golf, they should have made that. They should have made that change, which is, play out of bounds as like a lateral hazard.
Absolutely. And also moving the ball. If you're starting the game, it's a hard enough game to pick up and really be a decent at. So
Yeah.
I tell, when I start to play with people that have just picked up the game, I say move it everywhere.
Yeah.
Give yourself a little bit
Right.
of advantage just to learn the game, to get yourself
What
started.
the USGA isn't taking into consideration for us normal people playing golf is, course conditions. We're fortunate out here at the beach because we have beautiful golf courses, but I mean, if you're playing at 2 o'clock and you get in a bunker, a greenside bunker,
Yes.
I mean, it's a free for all. I mean, you could be a foot underground with your golf ball. So that's one rule. I mean, we play it down in the rough, which is okay. Unfortunately, sometimes it might be a little thin. Now you're in a situation where, skill really isn't involved. It's luck at that point. What kind of bounce did you get in the rough? But between the rough and then the sand traps, penalty areas they like to call them.
The bunkers. Bunkers are a big factor.
If you watch the PGA Tour, it's a joke. I mean, guys hit a tee shot on a par 3, and when they don't hit it perfect, they're yelling for it to get in the bunker. They don't want to be in the rough, because it's a foot deep. So that's.
Yeah, that's one of the things. If you get in a footprint or get in an area that's not well raked, it is almost a penalty. And
Yes.
and you don't, guys
Not
on
fair.
tour,
Not
right?
fair.
The guys on tour, they
They
don't
don't
play in
plan
those,
it. No.
those
No, they don't.
circumstances.
No.
Same things in the fairway when you get into a divot. Most of the times, in the PGA Tour, if you do get into a divot, it's not a very big divot.
Yeah.
I mean, we get out and when you play public golf courses, you can have a lot more divots, and
Yeah.
they're a lot deeper as well.
Yeah, I don't really have that big of a problem with that. I understand your point, but that happens very rarely, I think.
Yeah, I agree. It does happen rare.
I'd rather tweak the out of bounds rule, the bunker rule. But then again, like we were just talking about, we all have our own rules.
Right.
So as long as everyone's abiding by those
as long as
rules.
everybody's playing by the same rules. That's
Right, the same
whatever
rule,
group
right.
you're in.
Right.
Whether you're playing with a foursome or if you got 12 people out there playing, everybody has to play by the same rules, and that includes swiping those putts away too, Johnny.
Yeah, no doubt. I can't believe people do that.
That's why you have to put the ball in the hole, because what is 12 inches for one person might not be 12 inches for another. That's for sure.
Yeah, no doubt.
So it's a crazy situation, but it is really good to see a lot of younger golfers playing, and I know you see them come to your store
yeah,
as well.
Absolutely,
and,
yeah.
It certainly has added to the game of golf.
Yeah, and there's no doubt, and I think it's going to continue to grow. I'm a little concerned about, the availability of tee times. Again, locally down here, we're pretty fortunate. I mean, like Ocean City Golf Club has a phenomenal deal down there for members looking to join at a reasonable rate. Tom Rourke, obviously, with his 3 courses, I think it's one of the best deals in the country, the membership there. So we're fortunate at the beach to have accessibility, where if you live in D.C. or Baltimore or New York or wherever you're from, it's a little bit more difficult to get on golf courses, and then not only to get on, but also the cost. The cost is a little bit higher. But again, it's kind of like supply and demand, and golf courses, at least privately held golf courses, have to make money, and the cost of running a golf course has changed drastically in 20 years. So everything's more expensive, from insurance to chemicals, payroll. So I don't think a lot of people out there think that golf course owners rake it in, and they are raking in, but it's going right back out the door for expenses. So. Yeah, it's
not an easy business.
Yeah,
and
we're not gonna. I don't think we're gonna see growth in the golf course building business either. I mean, we went through that in the '90s, and that kind of fizzled out. And I think 400 or 500 golf courses closed over like a 3-year period. So I feel like we probably have the right amount of courses. It's just a question of finding the tee times available to play.
Well, the amount of golf courses, the amount of golfers playing right now is really a good thing for golf. It's certainly grown. We talk about the younger players. We talk about some of the older players getting back into the game.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I've been a little disappointed, I think this has to do with the division between LIV and the PGA Tour, is the fact that I'm not that excited to watch golf on TV anymore. I'm like, the PGA Tour events just don't have the same, flavor that they did back in the day. Obviously without Tiger, that's a big factor, but there's only the majors that I really have to tune into.
Right.
I do enjoy watching LIV sometimes, but I really don't like the fact that they're separated. I don't like the fact that I'm not excited about sitting down on a weekend, on a Saturday or Sunday, getting in front of my TV and watching the PGA Tour.
I think part of the equation there, let's say LIV and PGA Tour got back together. I still think we have a problem, and that problem is lack of personalities. There's so much money in the game now, and that's the main reason for that is LIV. That's a whole other different conversation, but there's so much money involved that I think these golfers, they're just so in a tunnel. They have blinders on, and they just want to, perform at their best. You look at guys like Patrick Cantlay. He's a great golfer, but doesn't really bring much to the fan experience. I'm just trying to think of a top 10 guy. And again, the PGA Tour doesn't have him. That's Bryson DeChambeau. He's a personality. He hits, obviously, the younger kids want to see someone hit it a long way, and he does that. I think there is a lot of guys and gals that really do like Scotty Scheffler. He's a great personality. He's obviously the #1 player in the world who might go after some of Tiger's records. But here's a guy, good family man, married, has a couple kids, plays great, and he can get heated. He's got a personality. If things don't go his way, you'll see him. He might toss a club or two, and maybe take the Lord's name in vain. But he's a good personality, and Rory's a good personality. But other than that, you go, on at least in the States. We don't really have a lot of personalities, and I think technology-wise, on TV, they're trying to make it a little bit more exciting and different through
Well, I got an idea, Johnny. I thought about this too right in this morning. The Savannah Bananas have just taken over, like, entertainment. They're like the Globetrotters, obviously, of baseball. And I feel like golf could use something like that. I think it would be a kind of a neat thing if somebody could come up with a format that's fun, it's laid back, it's entertaining. Because sometimes, trying to watch golf is like watching paint dry, depending on the leaderboard.
Right. I'm just trying to think how we could, make that a comparable situation with the Bananas.
Well, these young kids, these influencers, that are doing all these things, they come up with some crazy ideas, that change the game around a little bit. I think there are some opportunities for somebody like that to do something kind of fun and entertaining, because golf courses present a lot of different opportunities. Whether it's putting, chipping, long drives, and different formats. Whether it's best ball, alternate shot, whatever the case may be. So somebody creative puts it together with some personalities. That's the other thing.
That's I think the problem.
And those guys, the players on that Savannah Bananas, they go out of their way to take care of their fan experience, and they make sure that the fans are involved. They spend time with the fans, and that's something that with the PGA Tour, it's like when you play in these pro-ams sometimes, and the PGA Tour players, you're just along for the ride. You're not really having that interaction with them, and you kind of just try to stay out of their way.
Yeah, it's definitely a tough situation, but I think I hate to say it, but it goes back to the money. They're playing for so much money. That they're in their zone, and they're going to do what it takes to, finish 5th. The big difference between finish 10th and finishing 10th.
No question.
Finish 10th and finishing 5th. It could be $300,000 or $500,000. So it's
Well,
tough.
Johnny, that's a great segue. We'll take a quick break here at Ruddos Golf. We'll come back, talk about the Ryder Cup, talk a little bit about the money, but more importantly, talk about the loss of the U.S. team this year, and get your thoughts on that after this. So stay with us.
And now a word from our sponsor.
I love a good adventure, and my friends and family do too. So we all drive Toyotas. Tacomas for my rugged buds, and Corollas for my city crew. And I drive a RAV4 that I take camping, shopping, and basically everywhere else. We all picked our Toyotas because they're reliable and efficient and have amazing resale value, saving us money now and down the road, so we can make every day an adventure. Check out buyatoyota.com for deals and inventory. Toyota, let's go places.
And welcome back to the Endless Golf Podcast presented by Toyota. Staying with me is PGA professional and the owner of Ruddos Golf, John Ruddo. And John, talk a little bit about golf, the growth, and some of the things happening on the PGA Tour. But we're going to turn our attention to the Ryder Cup now. Obviously, another disappointing loss for the American team. And it all happened really the first 2 days, Johnny.
Oh, my God, Bobby. It was very disappointing. They had 2 long years to prepare for this event, and it was over Friday afternoon pretty much. Boy, I wish I had the answers for you. It's a tough deal.
It's funny you said it because whenever the team loses, whether it's in football, baseball, we're always looking for answers. And sometimes the answer is the other team was better and they just beat us.
That's what I was getting ready to say. That I think, and I could be wrong, but the Europeans, they live, die, and breathe for the Ryder Cup. I mean, it's a priority to them. And I think even Rory said he'd rather have a Ryder Cup than Augusta. I probably don't believe that, but they really want it bad, and they play for each other, and they gel for each other. We're independents. I mean, the Americans are built on making money on the PGA Tour. Their whole focus is individuality, no team aspect. And those Europeans, they grew up watching Seve, Bern Harlanger, Nick Faldo represent the European nations, and they want to follow in those footsteps. And it means, I truly believe it means more to them. I know the Americans don't like hearing that, but you can just see it in their eyes.
Well, you know what? I would say this about that as well. Sometimes when it means so much to you, it puts more pressure on you.
Yeah.
They've found a way, if in fact you're correct, and it does mean more to them, and I'm not sure I agree with that, but if it did, that would put more pressure on themselves to be successful, where the Americans would say, you know what, we're just going to go out there and play. I think, though, it does come and bring a different point to sports, and that is we realize how important the team aspect is, whether it's football, golf, baseball. When you have a team that's playing for one another and that gets along, and that's rooting for each other, and that gels and genuinely likes each other, I think it's much easier to to play better. And with the Europeans, I think they had basically the same team this year they had a couple of years ago. So that I think that's a big advantage when it comes to playing in the Ryder Cup.
Yeah, and then also just everyday life. Again, it's different now, but like back in the 90s, the European Tour, it was like a traveling circus. I mean, they stayed in the same hotel rooms together. They ate together, they drank together. The Americans, it's they fly separately. They have a team around them. So you don't get that. You just can't come together for a week and say, "Oh, I'm going to gel with this guy." I mean,
what is interesting about that, though? A lot of the Americans grew up playing together and are good friends.
Well, I mean, they play competitively together, but they didn't hang out. I don't think they. I mean, they live in different parts of the country. I mean, if they would meet up in a junior event, and one guy lived in Texas, the other guy lived in California. I just think, again, I think it goes back to, and again, there's more pressure on the Americans. They've won what, a couple in the past. There's more pressure on the Americans because they've lost more recently.
Right.
So you say, the Europeans have more pressure, because they're the favorites. I think the opposite. I think, the Americans.
There's no doubt the Americans had probably more pressure because of what you're saying, is because they are the Americans. They haven't won as much as they probably should have in a lot of people's eyes, and and we go, here we go, another Ryder Cup. Are we gonna lose this one again?
Yeah, but I hate to really stifle this conversation, but the Ryder Cup is not the Ryder Cup of the 80s and the 90s. I don't want to sound like this old disgruntled man, but I mean, Justin Rose lives next to Justin Thomas. I mean, they're Americans. I mean, they're Americanized. I mean, from Rory McIlroy, although he is moving back to London, but they play golf together at the Bears Club in Jupiter. I mean, they're best buddies. But then they're playing in a Ryder Cup. So, I mean, I like the old days. You know who Peter Baker is? No. Peter Baker was a European Tour pro that no one even knew about, that played on the Ryder Cup and won on the Ryder Cup. So I like the days where the Europeans would come over and we would have no idea who they are, other than the big, three, Seve, Nick, and Longer was part of that too, and Woozy. It was just, I don't know. it was a situation where I think we're just we're almost like in a no-win situation, because if we do win too, it's like, oh well, you should win, your favorites, and then obviously the setting in New York, Bethpage is a beautiful place, but
well, that's a whole nother conversation. The behavior of
we weren't
the
very
fans
welcoming,
at Bethpage.
right? We weren't very welcoming.
Now, it's interesting. I've talked to a couple of PGA professionals, and some, have said, obviously, and there's some tour players. Tom Watson, was mortified by the way that the fans acted. But then there's other PGA Tour players and other PGA Tour or PGA professionals that say, you know what, the Europeans treated the Americans the same way when they're on foreign soil as well. So I'm not sure I buy that. I thought some of the stuff was way over the line.
Yeah, Rory especially.
But I'll say this too. I think that's the way it is in sports. Whether you go to any sporting event, the decorum of
it's different now.
It's just different in today's world.
I mean, you were just at a Ravens game.
But I will say this. That's the one thing I always loved about golf. There was a level of respect in golf, and then there was an expectation of behavior that people that stood by, both the players and the fans, and that's kind of dwindled a little bit. And I think we saw that a little bit at this Ryder Cup at Bethpage Black.
Well, I hate to bring up the younger people, but again, the social media. You had a lot of people, I think, at the event. It's also a party. Okay, so you get a lot of non-golfers at an event like this. So you mix in alcohol and other types of things, and the fact you have someone who's not familiar with the golf experience at a tournament, and you factor in the alcohol and the other things they might have been doing, that's going to lead to problems. And I think that's part of the problem. We had talked about younger people getting involved. Not all the younger people are perfect individuals, so.
I also think Rory and some of the Europeans didn't help themselves because when you're in that environment, I know how difficult it is. Not that I've been on tour, but you cannot interact with the fans. That is the kiss of death, and it's like kind of interacting with your opponent. Obviously Seve was one of the greatest golfers at gamesmanship ever, and it's just kind of another form of gamesmanship. Now I understand they crossed the line.
Yeah.
I think there's other ways you can handle it. I'm not sure Rory handled it the right way.
Well, I tell you, Paul Azinger made a good point. They're tripping at Rory, and as Rory's walking off the green, he gives someone the finger. So that's something Rory shouldn't have done. That's only going to entice the individuals to follow him around, and then they start talking about his extramarital affairs and other things. And I think if Rory would have just kept his head down and didn't give the fans the finger, that was, in my opinion, that's
over the line.
Right.
It really is.
He's asking for it at that point in time, in my opinion.
And he's asking for it a little bit too. When you say we're gonna go to Bethpage, we're gonna go to New York, and we're gonna win the Ryder Cup. I mean, he was vocal, and that's maybe that's leadership. But when you put yourself out there, when you're going to New York, you kind of got to expect those things. It was funny. I saw Chipper Jones, the former Atlanta Braves. He came out and said, you know what? I never let my wife go to New York when we played.
Right.
I never took my family because I knew what was going to happen, and that's a good point. He knew what arena he was walking into, and it's kind of like yourself, a Commanders fan going to an Eagles game. That's not a great experience.
Well,
either.
a Redskin fan going to the vet back in the day. Well, you just you wore like khaki colors. I didn't have the burgundy. I didn't have the burgundy. I didn't have the burgundy and gold on. But yeah, the vet was probably a comparable experience.
Well, I don't think Rory did himself any favors, moving forward. It'll be interesting to see. And, you got to say, too, I mean, gosh, he's, to your point, he lives in America. He plays golf here. He's loved by so many golf fans in America. It's not like he's a villain. He kind of created himself as a little bit of a villain in that setting, as far as I'm concerned.
Everyone was cheering for him literally, 7 months ago at Augusta.
Right.
And then 7 months later, he's, getting yelled at. But, again, I think a majority of that, to be honest with you, is from non-golfers who are at the event, who are inebriated and are probably being enticed by their friends to say something. Because, you have a couple 100,000 people sitting around there. It only takes, a dozen or two bad eggs to
There's
make
no
the
question.
situation bad.
Well, it's going to go back to Ireland and Roy's home country, and he did make a point to say that he hopes that his hometown fans behave a little bit better, whatever that means then,
Right.
and then the Americans did here in New York. But we'll see about that. We'll see if that actually happens. We'll see if there's any, because I think that the genie's out of the bottle right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's okay if I ask you a question. I know
Sure.
this is your show, your podcast, but what's your take on Keegan Bradley as the team captain, and who do you think should be the team captain in the years to come?
You know
27.
what? I had no problem with Keegan Bradley. I think that whole captain stuff, I hate to say it, is a little overrated. I think the team has to gel. I mean, it's important to have leadership. I agree with that. But I think that's always made a big deal. I think the personalities on the team are probably more important in golf than the person who picks those people. And I think the people he picks is more important than his presence during the Ryder Cup. That's
Right.
my opinion.
And then, so you think Luke Donald didn't play a big factor in the victory the past 2 years for the Europeans?
Maybe I don't think so. I think it was the players.
Yeah.
I think the players. And we talked about earlier. I think the fact that they got along, they played together before, they've been in that environment. I think they had the experience. I think that was the biggest factor. I'm not going to say it that it's not like a baseball or football game where you're coming up with strategies and you're calling plays and you're calling defenses are off. It's a whole different environment.
Well,
once the guy gets on the golf course, he's pretty much on his own.
Yeah, but there's a lot of analytics to golf prior to going on the golf course.
Anybody. I would say my argument would be anybody can read the analytics. So, I think you got to have some leadership. Yeah, some guys that can get guys a little bit motivated. But then again,
it's just a different event.
It's a different event.
It's a different event. In fact, I just got to thinking. The TGL, which is Rory and Tiger's indoor golf league, starts back up in January, and I think a couple of guys who competed against each other at the Ryder Cup or on the same team in TGL. So they go from, wanting to beat their brains in September, and then in January they're cheering them on.
How about a non-golfer? How about a coach? How about Nick Saban coaches a team? How about somebody that's not?
Well, the funny thing is the captains bring in those kind of guys for motivation the week of, and I think you hit it on it. They compete better. I mean,
players make plays.
Yeah. They play better. I'm glad we figured all this out. Maybe the PGA of America will listen to this podcast.
What? We have a friend of ours, Gage Lester, who has a little embroidery on his bag, and it says "Play better." And they ought to just put that on the Americans' bag.
Yeah,
play better. If you play better, you win. It's pretty much that simple.
Putt better.
And putt better. I mean, that's something we didn't talk about.
Yeah, we didn't talk about the conditions either.
Yeah.
The conditions didn't help the Americans.
Yeah, but the putting was not good by the Americans, and it seemed like the Europeans made every putt.
That's always the
and
case.
It seems like that's always the case.
That's what it comes down to.
So maybe they may spend more time on the putting green
Yeah.
before the Ryder Cup. There's an idea. Well, John, again, thanks for spending some time with me here on the podcast.
Yeah, buddy.
I certainly enjoy talking a little bit of golf with you always. And I guess the next time we get together, we'll be talking about Christmas. It's right around the corner. So just put Ruddos Golf on your Christmas list.
Appreciate
and make sure
that.
you do shopping for your golfers right here at Ruddos
We have
Golf,
it.
right?
We have everything. So come on by.
All right. We'll see you next time. So long, everybody.
The Endless Golf Podcast has been brought to you by Toyota.